Arrogant mortal, I let you live once, so I might experience the sensation of defeat. Now I am engorged on 10,000 souls, and I am invincible. Beyond it, your soul will learn agony and ecstasy under the lash of the Dark Prince of Pleasure, once I send it to meet him. KARI is the greatest keeper of secrets among the demonic legions of the Chaos God, SLAANESH. He has pursued a millennia-long vendetta against the descendants of Anarion and the High Elves of Ulthuan, following nearly 6 millennia of imprisonment within the Great Vortex in the wake of his second battle with the very first Phoenix King, Anarion. The Great Catastrophe. KARI has long been considered the greatest keeper of secrets in service to the Dark Prince of SLAANESH, for it was he who led the rape of Ulthuan during the Great Catastrophe in the early days of the mortal world. During that great struggle, the first Elven Phoenix King Anarion faced KARI and was also the first mortal to destroy the demon's physical form. The two confronted each other a second time during the Battle of the Isle of the Dead, and Anarion was once again victorious, resulting in the greater demon becoming imprisoned within the Great Vortex for more than 6 millennia. KARI's revenge. In the year 2173 IC, scarcely 10 years after Finubar the Seafarer ascended to the Phoenix throne of Ulthuan as the latest in the line of the High Elven Phoenix Kings, a black storm swept across that fair island continent. The seas boiled and the skies rained fire down upon the land. Many elves drowned in swollen rivers, were crushed beneath collapsing buildings, or incinerated by bolts of polychromatic lightning. Great was the ruin wrought on Ulthuan that night, but the worst was yet to befall the land. At the storm's height, the great waystone atop Mount Unterek was uprooted and hurled into the valley below. Before the broken shards of the monolith had come to rest, a cloud of chaos furies claw their way into the mortal world, tearing reality apart like wet paper. Moments later, a far more monstrous form forced its way through. The Keeper of Secrets, KARI, was reborn into the mortal realm. The first town to feel the wrath of KARI's horde was Tor Anan, a provincial holding in the valley beneath Unterek. The defenders fought back, but could not hope to prevail against that unholy fury. Furies dove and wheeled through the sky like misshapen bats, their shrill cries freezing the blood of all who heard them. Rage-maddened bloodletters and blood crushers hurled themselves again and again at the defenses, splintering wood and shattering stone, desperate to slay the high elves that cowered inside. KARI waded through the bloodshed, and the elves scattered before his coming, all save Eanith, Lord of Tor Anan, and his household guard. They formed the wall of spears against the demon's onslaught, only to have their weapons splinter on his side, snapping Eanith's sword beneath the pincers of one massive claw. KARI thrust his fist into the elf's chest. Closing his fingers about Aenis' heart, the demon tore the still pulsating organ from the High Elf's noble body. KARI brandished the heart briefly before the elf's dying eyes, bellowed in triumph, and swallowed it whole. Casting the limp corpse aside, the Keeper of Secrets turned his back on the ruins of Tor Anan and sought out his next victim. Scarcely had the echoes of bustle about Tor Anan ceased when KARI struck once again, riding the tides of magical energy to instantly emerge on the other side of Ulthuan, scant leagues from Tor Ivres. Once again, the High Elves responded swiftly. Although sorely pressed, the defenders of the fortress were able to hold the demons at bay while aid arrived from Kotik and the Tower of Hoeth. KARI withdrew his forces at the battle's height, retreating into the Anuli Mountains. Over the next month, the pattern continued. KARI struck at outposts in the Dragon Spine Mountains, Avalon, and many other provinces of Ulthuan. Indeed, few areas of the High Elven Realm remained unscathed. Yet each time KARI would suddenly abandon the battle, often within minutes of achieving a devastating victory. With no end in sight, and Ulthuan in a state of terror, the Phoenix King ordered every seer in the realm to focus their powers of divination on ending the threat, lest the demon's dread presence befoul Ulthuan entirely. After much meditation, the cause behind the attacks became clear. With horror, the High Elven seers realized that this abyssal monstrosity was the very same being who had led the invasion of Ulthuan over 6,000 years before, slaughtering millions and shaking the Elven civilization to its core. The seers believed that KARI had been reborn, a thing of vengeance, consumed with a need to settle old scores. As such, the incursions that had recently plagued Ulthuan were far from random. They were directed by the cruelest of motives. KARI was carving his vengeance on the descendants of Anarion, bringing towns and fortresses to battle long enough to spirit his victims away to face the eternal torments of SLAANESH. Over the many thousands of years since the time of the first Phoenix King, Anarion the Defender, the hallowed bloodline had prospered. Not all the scions were of noble rank, and had little to connect them beyond their lineage. As such, their disappearance on battlefields where many hundreds of elves had been slain had gone unnoticed and unconsidered by all but kith and kin. The seers believed that almost all known scions of Anarion's line had now been accounted for, either lost to KARI's rage, or they were away from Ulthuan, and therefore, hopefully, safe for a time. The remaining heirs were twin princes, scarcely beyond childhood by the exacting standards of the elves. Their names were Tyrion and Teclis. Each carried Anarion's mark, though in different ways. Tyrion had learned his lessons well, and already had both the skill and confidence of a warrior born. Teclis, though weak of body, had proved himself adept at the myriad magical arts. The princes were hurriedly summoned from their home in the Kotik woodland and spirited away to the safest place in all of Ulthuan, the Shrine of Asuryan. There, an army, drawn from the finest troops the High Elves could field, would defend the princes against all possible peril. As divined, KARI's attack came soon. Scarcely a day after the Shadow Warriors first brought reports of demons in the mountains of the Atane Peninsula, the Keeper of Secrets vanguard marched within sight of the shrine. As the demons advanced, KARI sent intoxicating visions flowing over the walls of the shrine to bedevil the dreams of those within. Many elves succumbed to these illusions of desire and phantasms of fulfillment. Some fell into deep comas, never to awaken. Others threw aside armor and weapons, marching blindly into the demon hordes and being torn to shreds, all casting themselves from the cliffs to perish on the jagged rocks below. Within moments, the stony slopes of Asuryan's Isle were engulfed by KARI's hordes. Demons darted and leapt across the jagged rocks, paying no heed to the clouds of arrows launched into their ranks from the shrine's walls. Lords of Change hurled bolts of sorcerous fire at the defenders, cawing with delight as elves twisted and burned in multi-hued flames. Flocks of furies swarmed across the defenders, plucking unfortunate high elves from the walls and casting them onto jagged rocks. Nurglings oozed their way through gratings and coverlets to tear and bite at the ankles of the defenders. Asuryan still watched over his shrine, however, and demonic flesh blackened and burned wherever it touched the walls and fortifications. Yet still, the horde came on. Through it all, the elves fought without hope, knowing that to yield was to deny the sacred trust of Venerian. Along the walls, each strove without thought for his own life, hacking at demonettes and plague bearers until armor and stone were stained with demon blood. 100 unnamed heroes struggled and died that day. Archers from Ivres and sword masters from Hoeth fought alongside knights from Calador and Illyrion. Wherever the fighting was thickest, there stood the Phoenix Guard, striving as if to drive back the foe by their valor alone. Yet the demons cared not for their losses. Finally, the elves were undone, not by a lack of courage or skill, but by the timbers of the shrine's gate. Battered by sorcery and demonic might, the gate collapsed under the immense weight of a beast of Nurgle. The battle now devolved into a primal contest of survival. Groups of elves fought back to back as demons swirled and slaughtered their way through the shrine. Now, the balance of arms began to tilt in favor of the elves. The merest wound left demons vulnerable to the holy power of Asuryan's shrine, and the weakest of KARI's horde were consumed by cleansing fire. KARI stepped through the ruined gate and drank in the heady scent of fear and slaughter. No one could stand before him, and he strode swiftly through the chaos of battle, climbing the stair of eternity and into the innermost sanctum of the shrine of Asuryan, where his prey waited. At the last, only 20 Phoenix Guard stood between KARI and the twin princes. Yet the High Elves did not yield. They fought bravely on stones already slippery with carnage, yet KARI would not be denied vengeance. As one arm darted to block the guards' halberds, another gracefully disemboweled half a dozen opponents. Bolts of shriveling fire burst from KARI's eyes to consume the rest of his foes. As the last desiccated corpse fell, the young Tyrion knew his defense and that of his twin fell solely in his hands. He mouthed a prayer to Asuryan, drew his sword, and went to meet his destiny. The promising warrior though he was, Tyrion was overmatched from the first. KARI parried Tyrion's desperate thrusts with mocking ease. In lilting tones, he taunted the elf with every cheated blow. Yet KARI had made one fatal misjudgment. So focused was he on Tyrion that the demon had all but forgotten Teclis's presence. As Tyrion was knocked sprawling by the sweep of a massive claw, Teclis unleashed an attack of his own. While Teclis did not have Tyrion's strength and vigor, his crippled frame harbored a mastery of the mystic arts. Now Teclis hammered at the demon with all the sorcerous fire he could muster. As the magical bolt struck, the creature was blasted clear off its feet. KARI tumbled across the plinth where Asuryan's flame burned. One mighty arm passed through the eternal flame, and the demon screamed in agony. No ordinary flame could mark KARI's hide, but against this, the sacred fire of Asuryan, the creator god and king of the elven pantheon, the demon had no defense. The fire coursed across the demon's body, burning ever fiercer as it spread. KARI screamed as his skin blackened and crackled. Rising to his feet, Tyrion struck the demon again, and his sword took up the flame. Each new cut opened up fresh wounds, lancing the cleansing fire into the demon's core. Crippled with pain, KARI was able to do little except stagger away from Tyrion's onslaught. With each stroke, the elf prince drove the demon toward the great arch that overlooked the Sea of Dreams. With a final scream, KARI's monstrous bulk toppled through the arch and plummeted the thousands of feet into the sea below, where the waves swiftly stole the demon from sight. Tyrion and Teclis emerged from the sanctum to find the battle won. Demons could not easily endure in that holy place, and only KARI's maddened will had sustained them even this long. When the Keeper of Secrets was lost to the sea, the power that sustained his demonic horde faded, and the demons were swiftly consumed by the power of Asuryan, leaving only piles of blackened ash. As dusk fell, the High Elves celebrated their desperate victory and mourned their losses. Through it all, Tyrion and Teclis stood in silence. They knew their destinies had been forever altered, and that one day they would have to face KARI again. Now onto his Wargear. First, Wit-Stealer Sword. The Wit-Stealer Sword, wielded as KARI's primary melee weapon, was forged by the will of SLAANESH to arm him for a battle against the bloodthirster Skarbrand. And the Lord of SLAANESH, KARI is a master of the magical arts, taught by the Prince of Chaos. And to end things off, a few interesting notes on KARI. KARI was able to glean Malekith's thoughts despite the potent runes on the Witch King's helmet shielding him from such efforts. It is unclear if this is due to the Keeper of Secrets' sheer power, its nature, or if the greater demon was just that skilled at psychology and reading body language to tell such things by mundane forms of observation, even without the aid of magic. In the greater demon's eyes, Malekith is unusual among the elves, as he feels that every elf always needs to talk, to boast, to vaunt their pride. Elves are worse than humans in their way. Malekith, meanwhile, feels no such requirement to speak his thoughts to anyone, least of all a lackey. KARI claims to have lain with Malekith's mother Morathi many times, in many forms, more than even the sorceress herself knows. When telling this to the Witch King, KARI even insinuated that perhaps Malekith wasn't truly a Narian son, but his own. Whilst enslaved to Malekith, forced to take the form of a she-elf, KARI said he was becoming more and more like Malekith, living, breathing, and claiming the realm of his birth was becoming an ever fainter memory. Anarion first defeated KARI during the Battle of Corumel in present-day Illyrion. And to summon KARI requires a specific sacrifice of virgins in a correct ritual manner, but even then, the greater demon often allows himself to be called only to destroy the impudent mortal who dared try to control him.